when did you first start playing the cello?
I first started when I was about 4. My mother used to teach young children the piano, and she tried with me, but disaster. And then I asked to go to, or she took me to a children's concert at the Festival Hall in London, and I saw the cello there, and I thought it just looked an interesting instrument to play. You know, you can see exactly how the fingers work, how the notes are made, and how it's bowed, and I didn't really hear it individually, it was just in the orchestra, but I asked if I could play one. And what arrived was a tiny little cello. I was a bit disappointed. I wanted one of the huge things, you know. But I enjoyed playing it, and it kind of went from there.
Have you ever played a different instrument?
The trumpet. I used to play trumpet, but my father, who was director of the London College of Music, one day he sold it while I was at school to one of his students, which I think was not a fair commentary on my ability.
How much practice do you do each day?
Oh dear. Well, it varies. I mean, it depends also how much I've got to do, how much music I've got to work on. But I feel an extremely bad person if I haven't done 2 hours a day. And I ideally like to do about 4, to be honest.
Do you have a specific structure you follow when you're practicing?
Yes, I always do 15 minutes warm-up. Just scales exercise, always. And that's about the only structure. Then I'm on to the pieces, you know, then I'm on to what I'm working at. Yeah.
Do you find it easy to put your own touch onto well-known pieces like the Swan or the Bard?
Yes, in a way. I feel that the pieces are, you know, how I feel them. I always try to get as close to how I believe the composer wanted a piece to go. So I wouldn't say I'm influenced by styles of playing. Yeah. You know, I was very influenced by Rostropovich, the Russian style of cello playing. But I'm not someone who's influenced by a particular interpretation of a piece, I don't think.
How do you overcome your nerves before a big performance?
It's one of those things I think that can only come with a lot of practice. And you never know when you're really going to be nervous. It can be a tiny little concert somewhere with not very many people in a small room like this. And suddenly you can be more nervous than in the Albert Hall, you know. So it's a little bit unpredictable. And I think that the only way really is experience. Playing a lot and trying to take every opportunity you can to play in public. And that even means just playing to a few people.
Do you like playing with music or without?
I prefer playing from memory, but I don't have a big thing about it. I mean, if it's a new piece of music or something, and it's been difficult for me to memorize it, then I don't have a problem playing with the music. But I just think I try, even a recital like the one I'm doing tonight, I try to play everything from memory. Because I think I don't like the music stand there, really. Yeah. I think it breaks down communication with the audience.
And have you ever had a mind blank in a performance, and if so, how did you overcome it?
Well, I've been pretty lucky with memory, really. I find that when I've really worked on a piece of music, worked on it technically, all the fingerings and all that sort of thing, that I usually know it from memory. And I wouldn't go out there. I mean, there've been moments when I've, hesitated and you think what's coming, but I've never really broken down in concert.
Do you still have a teacher or like a mentor who you kind of talk to?
Well, I suppose that I'm fortunate to be married to a cellist now, and she's a very good cellist, and so she listens to me quite a lot, and of course she will comment on my playing. Yeah. But I don't, and she's a very good teacher actually, but I don't play to my contemporaries or anything. Maybe I should, I don't know.
So she would kind of maybe see if you were falling into a bad habit.
Yes.
Unlikely, but
it's very likely. But yes, she would.
Yeah.
And vice versa, I listen to her playing, and we do criticise each other.
If you're playing in an orchestra and you're playing the bass line, do you ever get bored of just playing the bass line?
Well, to be honest, I don't do it. So I think I might do, but I've never really done orchestral playing, only when I was at college. It's not the way I see the cello. I've always sort of thought of the cello as a solo instrument, and that's what I've wanted to do.
Who who kind of inspired you when you were younger?
In the early days, first of all, I had some really good teachers, and I think that's incredibly important. If you don't get on with your teacher, it can kind of ruin everything. I mean, I remember I had the most dreadful maths teacher at school, so I never could do maths. But I had very good cello teachers, especially when I was about 13. I changed to a wonderful old Scotsman called Douglas Cameron, and he was very inspiring to me. But the cellist that I always really admired was Rostropovich, and I saw him for the first time when I was 13. It made a big impact on me.
Do you prefer to play like well-known cello pieces or kind of commission pieces, or?
I think a mix. I mean, I believe that it's important for musicians to get involved with new music. You know, classical music isn't all about dead composers, or it shouldn't be. And so I've always been interested in getting new pieces for cello, but obviously the great pieces are great, you know, people play them for a reason. They are really good pieces. So coming back to something like the Elgar Concerto, I always look forward to it.
Do you do lots of composing?
No. I've composed very few rather sentimental short pieces, but I don't really feel the urge to compose. People often tell me I should try and do more, but if you don't really feel it, I can't really see the point.
When you did compose those few pieces, how did you kind of start composing?
Very good question. You know what? I went to the piano, and I'm hopeless at the piano, but actually working out chords and things and harmonies, it's much easier to do that on the piano than the cello, so perhaps that would surprise people, but that's how I did it.
Do you often play it as a duet? Because Alice and I are playing the Vivaldi cello concerto together.
Yeah.
And
the two cello
Yeah.
concerto,
Yeah.
two cellos,
Yeah.
yeah.
And do you have any tips on like playing together, like getting your bows exactly in time, and if it's easier to face each other when you're playing, things like that?
I think it is if you're rehearsing, it
Yeah.
is, but in the concert you can't really do that.
Yeah.
You've both got to face out to the audience, and I think it's just practice really, you know, because a lot in that piece, which I've played with my wife in concert, a lot of it is sort of echoing one after another. You just have to synchronise how you're going to do it. But I think that the difficult thing for two cellos is intonation. Haven't you found that? It's really difficult. You've got things in thirds, and you sometimes even join on the same note, and it's difficult.
Yeah.
Did you ever go busking when you were at
Yes.
school?
I was the first ever busker on the Underground. Well, not the first ever, the first official one, because they decided, I think it was around 2001, that they really had to do something about the busking because it was technically illegal, and sort of all kind of people went down there and found themselves get arrested, you know. So they then decided to start licensing the buskers, and I kind of launched this initiative at Westminster Tube. Made £200. Yeah.
When you were busking, did you use it to raise money for charities? Or
Yeah,
just
I gave
generally?
it to the Prince's Trust, which I think is a brilliant organisation.
Does your cello have a name?
I call it lots of names depending on how it's all going, but it does have an official name. It's called the Barjansky Stradivarius. It's a wonderful cello, was made about 1690 apparently by Antonius Stradivarius, and it was played by a Russian cellist called Barjansky in the early part of last century, and he's kind of given it the name.
What are some of your favourite pieces on the cello?
I think with the concerto-wise, I would definitely say the Elgar. Shostakovich No. 1 is a great piece. The piece I'm playing right at the moment is a big favourite of mine, the Delius Concerto, which was, funnily enough, premiered by Barjansky. So there's all kind of links there, really. But the great cello pieces, as I said earlier, they're great. They're thought of as that for a reason. I mean, the Dvorak, the Saint-Saëns, the Schumann, the ones that are played all the time, they are really, really good pieces. And I always look forward to playing those.
When you had started playing the cello, did you ever feel like going back to a different instrument, or did you always just...
No, it was always the cello for me, apart from my brief trumpet escapade.
Who are your favourite composers, sort of in general?
Well, I guess I've got a liking for. I guess romantic music really, but that is a hugely wide term because Bach can be romantic. I like music which it touches people's hearts, you know, and you feel that when you're playing those pieces, you can really get through to the audience, and that doesn't really matter what it is. I mean, Philip Glass wrote me a concerto, which I think is a really good piece, and I feel I can get through to an audience with that piece, so it can be a contemporary piece as well. But I guess if you really, you know, ask me, I like the Russian composers, I like Shostakovich, Prokofiev, Rachmaninoff. You know, these are composers full of heart. And I also like a lot of the British music, Elgar Delius. I think there's some very underrated composers there. John Ireland is a favourite of mine. So yeah, I would say English and Russian composers.
Do you find it useful to kind of look at the background of a piece of music to help you sort of put emotion into it?
I think more the I think more the background of the composer, or you know, I think it's important to know about the composer and what he may have been going through or thinking at those times. You know, reading up about a particular piece, yes, I think it's interesting, depending on what it is. But you do also have to remember, I think, finally, that a piece of music should speak on its own and should be kind of abstract, but it's good to know the background.
And back to your warm-up, do you use feuillade a lot in it?
Yeah, actually, feuillade sometimes, but the one I do rigorously, which drives everybody mad around me, is by Kosman. Have you heard of him? Well, it's a horrible sort of semitonal thing that works its way down and tires your fingers out. So I do that first thing, about 5 minutes of that, get the fingers going.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yes.
That's it. Okay, some really good questions there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Hope you enjoyed tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah.